Thank you so much for tuning in. Please, please, please like, share, subscribe with everyone you know. Walimwes! Hi guys, welcome to episode 4 of the Not Done Yet podcast. And today I'm still continuing the story that we started with on the last episode. Walimwes, Saseni, what's up? I'm also Uduto. This is Barbara Cynthia Amondi, and this is the Not Done Yet podcast. So we left it at, I had gone to the office to see mom, and I asked if Gali's shoes fit her, and mom was like, no, I'm not sure because I don't stay with her. I will ask her mom. So I left. I didn't ask any more questions. I left there flabbergasted. I was like, I did not understand. Her mom, as in, did this girl come back from Rwanda, or what exactly was the mother talking about? Anyway, I left it there. So a few days later, I get a call from Dude. We were calling him Boy. So Boy got arrested. So he calls me and tells me that he has been arrested. And I ask him why he has been arrested. And he couldn't really explain it to me. So I call his brother and I tell his brother, hey, your brother has been arrested, so you need to go to the police station. For some reason, I did not go to the police station. I just felt some weird vibe, like something bad is going on. So later, the brother calls me and tells me that he had been arrested because he had not paid for the car that we had been using. All this time, this guy had a car. I knew it was his car, only to find out that this car had been hired and had not been paid for the last 3 months. Imagine that. Like, who just decides to have a hired car running around town and you don't have a job and you cannot... Let me have some water. So then the family looked for some money. They paid the lady who was owing the money. So the lady took back her car and the family paid her some amount. It's only later that I realized that they hadn't paid the whole bill. So I go to see Boy's brother in his house. I just call him and tell him, I need to speak to you. So I go to his house and I ask him, whose child is Gali? Because somehow things are just not making sense to me. So then the brother tells me that Gali is the daughter to a cousin of theirs. So I'm like, what do you mean? Then he's like, who did you think was Gali's parents? Then I was like, but Dude told me that Gali was his child. Then the brother said, no, Gali is not his child. Gali is our cousin's child. And it made sense because all this time I wondered why Gali could not just come to the house to spend some time with us or play with Jordana and stuff like that. It was just hectic to get her to come to our place. So all this time I had been shopping for his cousin's child. And to this date, I don't even know if those things then reached the Gali, because I'm not sure, because she was not his child. I don't know if he even took those things to her or he sold them. We can never know about that. So then, when I was talking to the brother tells me something really, really interesting. The brother tells me, Babs, you need to get your things out of Dude's house. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, yeah, you just need to get your things out of his house. So he was not really telling me the whole story, but like he was giving me a hint, like I need to get my things out of the house. I didn't get the hint. Do you know what I did? I went back to Dude and I told him, hey, your brother told me to get my things out of the house. And I think they even had a squabble there because he was so mad that the brother told me this. So me, I'm still there, I'm still in love. I'm still having a relationship. So one day, Dude texts me to their home. We went home with him and one of his relatives. We went to their home and I found out that they have a really big chunk of land that was not doing so much at that time. So then I come up with this idea because their place is really fertile. I was like, why don't we farm? Like, why don't you do tomatoes, onions, and some kienyeji mbogas and things like that? And Dude is for the idea, like, yes, we should farm. So I tell him, why don't you talk to your brother so that we come together and then farm as a family and then we sell and split the profits. So he comes back and tells me like, oh, my brothers are not interested, which was also a lie. He never told the brothers about the farming thing. So the brothers were not interested. So then he said, let's just do it on our own. So here was me. What did I do? I funded the farming project. And the saddest thing is, this dude used to send me pictures. Like, the farm has been plowed, the farm has been done what? The seedlings have started to... As in, basically, he just used to give me the headways of everything that was happening. And I believed him. Like, I think I even wrote on Facebook at some point, like, hey, my onions are coming up really well. The tomatoes are coming up really well. Oh, Lord. So then, as the farming project continued, so one day, he comes to my mom's place and he comes to pick me from my mom's place and we go home. So as we go home, he gets a call. Then he tells me that the brothers just called him that he has lost the key to the house. So we can't go to the house. Then he's like, what you do, just go back to mom's place. So I go back to mom's place. And this was just the beginning of the terror that I saw for the next few months.
This episode of Not Done Yet KE has been brought to you by Barbie Cakes Ksm.
Yes, so like I was saying, the key to the house got lost. His brother lost the key or something like that. So for the next 2 months, it became one story after the other. One story after the other. One story after the other. Like, oh, we cannot... I was like, why don't you just break the door? Oh, we can't break the door. The landlord can only send his own fundi to break the door. So you see, at this point, all my clothes are in that house. A lot of my stuff are in that house. So I'm surviving on sandak. Sandak, guys? Those sandak that butter sells. So I had a pair of sandak and I had some few clothes at home. So these are the things that I was wearing every other day as we wait. So I kept waiting and waiting and waiting. Week in, week out. There was always just a story. There was always just a story coming up why that door cannot be opened. So one time, I sat down with him and I told him, dude, please just tell me the truth. Why can't we go to that house, or why can't we break the door, or what the hell is happening? So then, guy tells me he owes the landlord some rent. So then I ask him, how much rent do you owe the landlord? He tells me he owes the landlord 3 months rent. So me in my head, I'm thinking, 3 months rent. So I'm feeling like my things that are in that house are more expensive than the 3 months rent is talking about. So what did I do? I went to my savings account and removed that money, 3 months rent. And because at this point, after he had gotten arrested and stuff, I was a bit skeptical. I gave that money to somebody I really trusted in his family to go and pay the landlord. Unfortunately, even this person that I trusted in the family was not really a good person. And I forgot to tell you guys, this man loved the good life. As in good life. Eating and dining in really, really expensive places. And guess who used to foot the bill? So at this point, he had my ATM card. He had my password. So, we would go somewhere and he would just swipe my ATM. By the way, I got broke. It reached a point I could not just keep up with, doing all these things. Eating in good places, eating in fine places. I could not just keep up with it. So I got really broke. So at this point, I have moved to my savings account. So that is why I got the money from my savings account and gave it to somebody in his family to pay the landlord. So the landlord gets paid. That is the message I get back. But now, another week has passed. We still are not able to access the house. So I'm asking him, what is the problem? He's like, oh, the landlord is sending somebody to come and open the door. Like, we cannot open the door on our own. We cannot use our own fundi. So there was just a story after another, This landlord, like he would talk to somebody on phone, like he was talking to the landlord, and I would believe him. Then he would tell me the landlord has said this and this and this. So it reached a point, this landlord apparently never used to stay in the country. He stayed in Rwanda or something like that. So the landlord was coming home and was going to organize how that door is going to be opened. Then I was like, okay, fine, let's wait. So landlord comes home for our funeral. So he tells me, let's wait for the landlord. After he finishes the funeral, he'll come over and we'll sort out this issue. I'm like, fine. I hear like he's talking to the landlord on phone and stuff like that. So the day the landlord is supposed to come to Kisumu, he calls me at night and tells me, apparently landlord has been shot. He was carjacked next to the airport and shot. So landlord has been rushed to Aga Khan Hospital, is at the ICU. Lord. You know, the funny thing is, I actually believe these stories. So landlord is at the ICU. So I'm like, okay, so we have to wait again. So the next day, he comes to our house very early in the morning telling me like he's going to the hospital to see the landlord and see how he's doing. So he goes to the hospital, gives me information like landlord is not doing so well, but let's wait and see. So landlord is in hospital, and in a few days, about 3, 4, 5 days, he comes up with the story that the landlord has passed away. So landlord has passed away. We still cannot access the house. So now we have to deal with the landlord's wife. Now landlord's wife is grieving. I mean, her husband has just died. So we cannot even start that story with her. So we have to wait for her to finish. So he says he talks to landlord's wife, and landlord's wife tells him to just give her time until she finishes the funeral issues. So we wait. So, you know, days are going, weeks are going. All these stories are just continuing like this. So landlord gets buried. I think even went to the burial. Landlord's wife comes into town, so he's still looking for landlord. As it was just a story after the other, a story after the other. I even got confused. So at this point, I'm like, no, this is not right. So I was so stressed, I decided to go to Mombasa with some friends of mine. So I get out of town. And I think getting out of town is what really helped me, because I was able to just sit down, think, focus, and just ask myself, what exactly is this that is going on around me that I'm not getting? So I'm in Mombasa for 10 days. So when I'm in Mombasa, he tries to communicate with me, but I refused. I told him I'm done. And actually at that point, I was done. I was done. Like I realized this one, there's just something wrong. So I was in Mombasa for 10 days. So when I come back from Mombasa, I go to see his mom. Because I want to ask, like, how can I get my things from that house? At this point, I have already ended this relationship, so I don't want to have any more relationship with this guy. But there's a lot of my stuff that is in that house. My clothes, my shoes, kitchen things, a lot of things. So when I go to see the mom in the office, she tells me that, things were gotten out of that house by dude's ex. So in my head, I'm like, dude's ex, why would she take my things from the house? So then I call dude. So when I call him, he tells me he's in their house, his mom's house. Now he didn't have a place to stay, so he was staying at his mom's. So then I go there to see him. And I ask him, how can I get my things? Then he tells me the ex-wife took the things from the house. So me, I'm like, no, if she's taken my things, then I'm going to get the cops to get my things, because she has no right to take anything of mine. Maybe yours because you guys were married, but for me, I would love my things back. So then I tell him to give me the number of the caretaker I wish I looked for this caretaker a long time ago. I don't know why I didn't. So I tell him to give me the caretaker's number, and he tells me the caretaker was fired. So the caretaker is no longer there. They have a new caretaker who doesn't know me and doesn't know him. I say, oh well. Then something clicks. When we stayed in that house, he introduced me to one of the neighbors, a lady. So then I remembered, this lady, she can help me out. So then I asked him for his phone. He didn't know why I was asking for his phone. So when I took his phone, I checked that girl's number and I called her. And I told her, hi, so-and-so, would you help me with the caretaker's number of that house down there? This caretaker, let's call him Osama. So she says that caretaker, but our caretaker is still Osama. I'm like, so the caretaker didn't leave? He didn't get fired at, caretaker is still the same guy that was there. So then I tell her, okay, please kindly send me the caretaker's number. And I give her my number to send to my number. So this girl sends me the caretaker's number. So I call the caretaker. And I tell him, hi, I would like to speak to you. Can I see you? Then he's like, he's in some place in Manyata. So then I tell him, fine, let me get a bike, and then you'll give the bike directions, and the bike will bring me to you.
This episode of Not Done Yet KE has been brought to you by Mkubwa Beauty Parlour.
So we go to Manyata with the bike guy. So he gives the directions and we reach where he is. So when I reach Osama, I introduce myself to Osama and I tell him what my problem is and that I would love to get my things from that house. And Osama is shocked. So this is sometime in June. So the caretaker is shocked and asks me, what are you talking about? So he shows me a letter. So this house, the things in this house had been auctioned in March of that year. As in every single thing that was in that house had been auctioned. We're in June and that was in March. I was shocked. I was so shocked. Oh my God, I can never forget that day. So then I tell him, he tells me, let's try and find out from the auctioneers if they still have some of those items. Because I was ready to buy back a few of my items. Because they were being sold for cheap. There's a Samsung microwave that I just bought for 18,000 bob. I saw on that list like it was going for 4,000 bob. So I was like, I could get these things back. So he called the auctioneers and unfortunately they had auctioned everything. Like everything. As in like my clothes, my shoes, my bras, my panties. Every single thing that was in that house was swept. Oh my God. I cried. I have never cried like that. I sat down on the road, on the tarmac, and just wailed like somebody had died because, gosh, it was too much. It was just too much. I couldn't believe this. So then I asked the caretaker that, why did you guys auction this stuff and yet I gave the family rent to pay for that house? Then the caretaker tells me that the rent was never paid and this guy owes rent for 2 years. So this guy had stayed in this house for 2 years and had not been paying rent. As in 2 years. 2 years, 24 months. Rent had not been paid. So I called the person from his family that I had given money to pay rent and I asked her, what did you do with the money I gave you for rent? Then she was like, oh, you just come, we sit down and talk. I told her, no, there's nothing that we're supposed to talk about. I just want to know what you did with my money. So it's only then that I found out that this money was used to offset the lady that they owed that he had hired a car from. Well, I cried. I cried to the point I could not talk. I remember trying to call a friend of mine and I cried. She thought somebody had died. Actually, she thought somebody had died. She rushed to her home only to find that I was not there. I sat down on the tarmac. Even this caretaker was so afraid of leaving me there because he thought maybe something bad would happen. So he stood there with me. He was just standing there and looking at me and not leaving. So some mama came from some shop there, I will never forget, and she gave me a seat and she got me out of the road and she told me just sit here. She thought somebody had died. So she said, don't worry, death is normal, you'll be fine. So I sat down there. The caretaker was still there with me. And then I called a friend of mine. So when I called my friend, I just told him to come and pick me from where I was. So then my friend picked me and we went to a restaurant. He took me to a restaurant and we sat down. And I remember that time we sat down for a really long time and I could not talk. I just kept drinking water and just staring at him. I could not even explain to him what the hell had happened. Now, the saddest part is I had covered this whole thing from my friends. So my friends didn't really know what was going on in that relationship. My friends didn't know that I was the one funding everything in the relationship. I had kept that away from them because I was feeling like, this is my relationship and this guy is just in between jobs. He will get something to do with it, So I didn't want, how do you call it in Luo? I was covering his nakedness. Yes, I was covering his nakedness so that people could not see that vulnerability. So I took care of everything. Let me tell you now, I had to sit down and start explaining to my friends everything that had happened. They could not believe it because he was such a really nice guy. He presents as a really nice, polite gentleman. And I remember my friends saying, hey, Babs, I think you've gotten a good man. How shocked they were with how this ended. Now let me tell you the funny thing. So after this, Dude disappeared on me. I never got my money back from their family and anything like that. So I went to the cops. And he was called. We did an agreement. He was to pay me everything of mine, like everything of mine that I lost in that house. The DCI told him that he was supposed to pay me. So we valued everything, and even the money that I given him, for farming, because there was no farming that was done. So it came up to a pretty sum of money. So he was told to pay me on a monthly basis, and he did one payment of 40,000 and then disappeared on me. I mean, it's been 8 years. I've never set eyes on this guy. I don't know whether he sees me and hides or anything like that. I have never seen him. I didn't want to go back to the cops because it was costing me money to follow up with him. So I let it be. Now, let me tell you the funniest thing. While we're doing this podcast, I get an M-pesa message that this guy has sent me 10,000 bob. This guy sent me 10,000 bob by mistake. And then he called Safaricom that he wanted the money to be reversed. So Safaricom calls me and I tell Safaricom, this guy owes me money and that is part payment of the money. So yes, I have recovered 10,000 from this guy by karma, as in karma just came to this doorstep and took care of that. And I hope one day maybe I'll be able to recover my other things that he owes me. And the funniest thing is that he tells people that I am a bitter ex, that I have refused to move on. But how would you not be bitter if somebody swindled you a lot of money like that and swindled you out of everything that you ever owed? By the way, I started life from scratch. After that relationship, I started life from scratch. Like, I had to buy shoes afresh. I had to buy clothes. I had to buy panties. I had to buy bras. I basically had to start life again. So yeah, that is how I got swindled. And yes, I carry with me life lessons. So many lessons I learned from that relationship. And trust me, no man has ever seen my money to date. Walimwes, thank you so much for listening to the Not Done Yet podcast. And please follow us on all our socials. We are Not Done Yet KE. And yes, by the way, we are not done yet. Walimwes, so thank you so much for listening to episode 4 of our podcast. And please stay tuned. Please subscribe, share, and just let the whole world know about our podcast. So in the next episode, I'm talking about relationship red flags. I think it is important for us to know the red flags that we have in relationships. So please comment down below some of the red flags you know. And then yes, we're taking it up on the next episode. Asanteni sana.